Good morning and a blessed Thursday to all. Thank you for coming out and welcome to the Prime Minister's press conference with his cabinet ministers. I'm Adelcia Connor-Falance, Press Secretary to the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. At this moment, I would like for all to stand for the playing of the national anthem. Thank you, and you may be seated. I'd like to extend welcome to the ministers of government present. With us today, we have the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, National Security, Citizenship and Immigration, Health and Social Security. We have the Honorable Senator Garth Wilkin, Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs. The Honorable Marsha Tamika Henderson, Minister of Tourism, Civil Aviation, International Transport, Employment and Labor, and Urban Development. The Honorable Dr. Joel Clark, Senator and Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment. The Honorable Senator Iseline Felicity Phillip, Junior Minister of Youth Empowerment, Social Development and Gender Affairs, Aging and Disabilities. Unfortunately, the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, and Honorable Conris Maynard, they have currently traveled for work abroad. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me also welcome the Honorable Samuel Duggins, sincere apologies, the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources and Cooperatives, Small Business, and Entrepreneurship, Sports and the Creative Economy, Entertainment and the Arts. Welcome. I'd like to welcome and thank the members of the media for accepting our invitation to participate in today's press conference and the public for joining us as well online. And without further ado, I wish to welcome the Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, to give his opening remarks before opening the floor to you, the media houses. The Prime Minister will share with you the recent developments within the Federation, regionally, and also internationally. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Press Secretary, Mrs. Adelcia Balance. I also want to recognize my cabinet colleagues, all whose names would have been mentioned before. And so I want to acknowledge our learned AG, Honorable Garth Wilkin, our Minister of Tourism et al., the Honorable Marsha Henderson, also the Honorable Samuel Duggins, Minister of Agriculture et al., the Honorable Joel Clark, Dr. Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development et al., and also the Honorable Iseline Phillip, the Minister of Youth et al. I also want to acknowledge, of course, the ministers who are not physically present with us today, but who are on national duty. Let me say that it's always a pleasure for me to be here to interact with our people through the various media. I was a bit tardy maintaining our public infrastructure by what we are doing in terms of the infrastructure build out. Suffice it to say, we acknowledge the many constituency level issues, and we have been and continue to work on these. In the coming weeks, I will be visiting Nevis as well to meet with Premier Brantley. There are a number of matters of mutual interests that we will be meeting to discuss. We have started our discussion, and our discussions will definitely continue to enhance the Federation. Citizens and residents, we live on an island that currently depends on overseas suppliers, imports of all types of fuel, all of our building materials, etc. Needless to say that we import much more than we export. Therefore, it is also important for the government representatives who have ministries to engage our outside partners so that our voices are heard, we are seen, and the interests of our people of St. Kitts and Nevis are represented and considered. For the last 7 years, before we came into service as elected by the people, we have discovered that our relationships on the international scene would have been fractured in multiple ways. We are part of the Caribbean community that I have come to realize many of us know very little about. That is why, following the World Bank and IMF spring meetings held in Washington, D.C., held in April, I met with Premier Motley of Barbados, and we have agreed to strengthen relations between our two countries, and I expect to be in a position to make an announcement in this regard very shortly. The Republic of Suriname has vast amounts of water and vast amounts of farmlands, yet we have no trade with Suriname, a CARICOM member state that has offered land and water to our farmers. The Cooperative Republic of Guyana is, and I quote, poised to become the world's fourth largest offshore oil producer, placing it ahead of Qatar, the United States, Mexico, and Norway. And that also, Guyana is also part of the CARICOM. Trinidad and Tobago is manufacturing instant food. Dominica is in the advanced stages of developing geothermal electricity, geothermal electricity plant, something that we are pursuing here in the Federation as well. There certainly exists a real possibility for us to recalibrate our policies through our legislative agenda to facilitate deeper trade relationships with the Caribbean in our pursuit to ensure that our citizens are benefiting from the best available prices of things we are dependent on that we import and consume, and as we pursue our agenda to establish a sustainable island state. So we are engaging our citizens and now also the world. Currently, the Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, Industry, Commerce, and Community Consumer Affairs, Economic Development and Investment, is and has been off island and 7 regional and international visits to strengthen diplomatic ties. From the 4th Trade Policy Review in Geneva, Switzerland, May 3rd to 5th, we traveled to the United Kingdom for the coronation, May 6th to 7th. And also, Dr. Douglas has attended the 12th Annual Investment Meeting in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Then he attended the 9th Summit of the Association of Caribbean States, ACS, in Guatemala, and is currently wrapping up a trip to Jamaica for the 26th meeting of the Council of Foreign and Community Relations and the 11th UK Caribbean Forum, May 16th to 18th. The Honorable Convis Maynard, our Minister of Public Infrastructure, Energy and Utilities, Domestic Transport, Information, Communication, TAL, and Post, is also overseas attending a meeting with his regional colleagues and digital transformation stakeholders at the Digital Leadership in the Caribbean Executive Sessions taking place in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. My other cabinet colleagues are here with me today, and they will each provide an update as to their respective ministry. What is this saying? We are engaging the world. And each time we engage the world in our region, there are tangible benefits for our people. We have to reestablish our relationships to ensure that we have partnership to establish our sustainable island state. We cannot do it alone, but through partnerships, we can definitely achieve it. Just quickly, in the healthcare, you would have heard me mention that we are doing a number of critical things. The next thing that I want to announce is that we have started the HEARTS initiative, which is a World Health Organization initiative, HEARTS, which means it's an initiative of heart health. Cardiovascular disease or heart disease is second cause of death in our federation. So we have cancers, we have cardiovascular disease, which include strokes and heart disease. So cancer, we are taking care of that. Heart disease and also strokes, along with other things. So we are attacking those diseases that are affecting our people so that we can live happier and healthier lives. And we will institute this. Of course, we are working on securing validated blood pressure kits, EKG machines, and I just want to mention that I've also made a request that we have an island cardiologist who will be placed at the hospital to take care of heart attacks and other acute and non-acute heart issues. Presently, we do not have that service at the hospital, and we need it most urgently. We'll also procuring an echocardiogram, that is ultrasound of the heart. We are seeking to have Holter monitors to monitor the rhythms of the heart. And I'm saying all of this so that people can know as we build out healthcare, it is really to save lives. I also want to mention that we will also be having our renal transplant specialist, Dr. Nadi S. Hakim, who I met with the MPs who are representing us in the UK Parliament when I was in the UK. That is why these travels are important. He's a specialist in surgery who started the first pancreas transplant program in the southeast of England and pioneered the finger-assisted nephrectomy. Nephrectomy is taking out the kidney technique for streamlining kidney transplants. He has published over 200 reviewed papers and has written and edited 24 books in the field of surgery and transplantation. Dr. Hakim will arrive in St. Kitts and Nevis from London on Saturday, June 3rd to finalize the arrangements. We are serious about kidney transplant. Just as I told you before, I was going to bring in another cadre of specialists, including neurologists and a surgeon from Harvard University who are presently working here. We will extend the quality of service, and I will travel where I have to travel to get the best to come here to establish the best. We've also had some donations from the Republic of China, Taiwan, who donated a number of equipment that would be necessary. We also had a donation from Mr. Leo Estridge in collaboration with Mr. Austin Edinburgh and Mr. Garrett Payne in the delivery of the dialysis machines, 15 brand new dialysis machines. We only had 5, which means that the machines were overworking and people had to come for treatment late at nights and the nurses were burning out. With much more machines, you can cut the hours of work and serve our people. I also express sincere gratitude to the Republic of Cuba, who would have helped us with specialists who are here as well. We have started the suggestion boxes so that our people can give us suggestions on how we can improve the healthcare of our people. Just by note, with respect to the eye clinic, we have the microscope, which is a brand new up-to-date microscope that is to do eye surgeries. We have started some other eye surgeries, and we'll start the deeper eye surgeries, cataract and so forth, in very short order. There are supply chain issues which we now have dealt with, and we are ready to resume. When we got into office, no eye surgeries were taking place at that level in the Federation. And so we had to procure from the beginning and start the program basically all over again. And so I also want to say from the national security standpoint, we are making significant changes. For example, the Alternative Lifestyle Program, we are revamping that, and we'll make an announcement very soon as to what we'll do with that. The Explorers Club, we are also going to strengthen that and invest more in the Explorers Club, because we think that is a club that, of course, form part of the whole initiative to make sure that we deal with a multi-pronged approach when it comes to security of our country. And as you know, St. Kitts and Nevis will be the leader of implementing what we call dealing with violence from a public health perspective. We have the experts here, Dr. Isben Williams. We are now building out the task force. We will implement that, and that will become, we hope, and we are pushing for it, the standard for the rest of the Caribbean. So we will lead on that in the CARICOM as well, and that is where we are positioning ourselves. With respect to the graduate finance program, I want to announce as well as you know, we had brought the interest on student loan in the development bank down to 5% for new loans, and the freezing of interest during the years of study, a total number of 4 1/3 years, which means that if you go to development bank and take a loan, your parents don't have to pay any interest for you while you are studying. And as a result of that, it gives your family space. And when you come back, that interest will not accumulate. Before, that interest used to accumulate up to $15,000. Even before you start paying back your student loan, you had to clear that interest that you accumulated while you're studying if your parents were not in a position to cover it for you, or you were not in a position to cover it. So that is a big relief. And also having 5% interest loan means that you'll pay less monthly. And we have estimated that students will save about $100,000, up to $100,000 during the course of the loan repayment. But I want to announce today that come June 1st, existing student loans in the development bank will now be reduced to 5%. I think when we made the first announcement, I said we are going to come back and announce something else. And so students who are presently paying at 9%, from the 1st of June, you are encouraged to go to the development bank and have your interest reduced from 9% down to 5%. This will give students space to buy a home, invest in a business, so that they can get out of their parents' home. Many of them come back from study, and because of the high interest on loans and the interest they accumulated during the studies, they have to stay home until they're 40 plus. And so we want that when students go to study, they can quickly transition into independent living. After all, what you went to study for is to advance your life. We understand that. So that is another announcement I wanted to make today. So in conclusion, I am very proud of the advancements that my team and I have made thus far. We have much more exciting developments coming. We are serious when we say we are going to transform St. Kitts and Nevis into a sustainable island state. So we continue to work diligently to propel our federation towards, as I said, a sustainable island state. We pledge to provide better, and that is what we will continue to do. Before I wrap up, I want to remind us of where we came from when we took office. When we took office, we were running a deficit. Even though they were talking about surplus when we saw the number, we were running a deficit. The development bank was in shambles. The National Bank ran its first deficit, I think, in its history, and was not able to pay dividends for the first time. Tens of millions of dollars missing. The country under restriction, tourism under stress, economic growth stunted to some extent because of bad decisions. So we had to stabilize the banks. We had to stabilize Social Security, because Social Security was paying out much more than it was taking in, becoming unsustainable. We had to deal with the deficit. And we had to open up the country. And because we took so long to open the country, our growth, especially in the tourism sector, is lagging behind our OECS counterparts. And so some of the things that we wanted to implement from a fiscal standpoint, we had to delay them, because we first had to stop the bleed and save the economy. And now we have done that, or we are doing that. We will be able to roll out. This government is not a government of excuses. We state the facts, deal with them as they are, and we will deliver for our people. So just a reminder of what we met, and I've been repeating it, and what has caused some of the postponement. But I will dare say that when objective people look at what we have done, I think that they would recognize that we have done well in the short time, first of all, to save our economy, and then start to deliver in earnest for our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for those opening remarks. We appreciate that. And at this point, we will open the floor to the members of the media to pose your questions. Please note that all questions will be geared towards the Prime Minister, and he will delegate accordingly. All questions, again, like I said, to be directed to the Prime Minister, who will delegate to the relevant officials to respond when necessary. When stepping forward, please be sure to state your names and the media house that you represent. I welcome the first media house with your questions.
Good morning, Glenn Bart, SK Newsline. Mr. Prime Minister, could you comment on the status of the auxiliary workers' pensions that was being worked on for quite some time, has gone across various political administrations, and yet the resolutions seem to be eluding the country, and a lot of auxiliary workers are actually waiting anxiously to have something. And also indicate on that score, how many years back are you going to make it retroactive? Secondly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs recently participated in the 26th meeting of Council of Foreign and Community Relations, COFOR, in Jamaica. And most of the discussion centered around Haiti. Can you tell us what is the situation from your vantage point and what CARICOM can do in relation to the Haiti situation, which seems to be getting way out of control now? And thirdly, for now, the land situation with regards to NHC. I know they were sorting out a lot of problems with the ownership of the land. What is the situation now with that? And if the situation has not been sorted out, how does that impact the current project that is being implemented with the Trinidadian company?
Thank you very much, Mr. Bat. I will deal with the first two, and the third one, pass on to the Honorable Dr. Joel Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development. When it comes to the pension, I have cabinet submission here for me. We looked at cabinet on May 11. It was yesterday, sorry, right? It was written on May 11, 2023. We discussed it in Parliament yesterday. It says in cabinet, sorry. It says pay gratuity to GAEs with a minimum of 10 years of service using the long service calculation formula. What we found, Mr. Bat, that when we got there, a lot of people started to approach the administration and say, one man said, Dr. Joe, I work here long, and me going home with pittance. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, Dr. Joe, look what money they give me after working all these. Other members were also approached by persons who complained that they would have worked in the service for a long time. And when you look at what they were taking home as a gratuity, it was small. And they were disappointed. Some of them even refused to pick up their check. Because it's obvious that these people were hurting. One gentleman told me, Dr. Joe, if I had retired the year before, I would have gone home with 3 times as much. I stayed on to work for my government. Now they changed the policy. I'm going home with 1/3 less. That had to be painful. And so, Mr. Bat, this is a list. You have the list, of all the persons who were negatively affected by the government, but the last government who took bread out of these people's mouth. And these are the least paid in our service. I remember when you look at this list, I see a name, Paulette Jederon from Connery, for example. Can't get you money because of a policy that was put in place in 2021. When you look at this list, I will count, but you can see dozens of persons are on it. And I want to announce today, the cabinet has shifted its policy. These persons now would receive a gratuity where we would use a different formula. And that formula would result in a significant increase in the amount that they will carry home. We have estimated it to be around total $700,000 to $800,000 more dollars. So very shortly, these persons will be called total, sorry. And very shortly, they wish, right? And very shortly, they will be called and they will have their increase. Let me give you an example without calling a name. I have a particular person here who carried home $8,640. With the calculation, that person should be carrying home, I should have carried home $22,460. So that person will be called back, receive a check. Not a check, they work for this check. It's their money of an additional $13,820. That's a significant amount more that person will be carried home. And if you look through the list, I see one here, for example. Wow, this person worked very long time. Without calling the name, this person worked 23 years and 7 months. And they took home, after 23 years, $11,192. With the new calculation, they would have carried home $33,072. So this person will be called for an additional $21,879. It was very disheartening to see those who work for the least service were those who were being disadvantaged and being taken advantage of. That could not have been a caring government. That is why we looked at this as a cabinet, all of us. The AG, of course, looked at the law and able to bring this into cabinet where I can say it was very favorably looked at. And so all these persons will be called to receive their extra pay. And hardly any of them is below $10,000. Hardly any of them is below. There's a significant amount more of money they will be carrying. When you hear people talking about surplus and caring and this and that, how can you take an average of at least $12,000 to $15,000 from those who work for the least amount in the civil service? So we are happy to correct this. But we are looking at other things that we want to implement to help those who deserve more help. For example, the maids at the hospital, Mr. Bat, somebody said they find a formula to pay them less. Imagine these people, the maids, used to get a little bit of extra overtime. Sometimes the overtime come up to extra $60 a week. They are the least paid, but yet somebody said they found a formula to take away the $60 a week. I mean, can you imagine that? They overlook a lot of things, well, you couldn't just look over that. Since years you're paying that. Nobody ever took any issue with it. All of a sudden, maid working for an extra $60 a week on top of their minimum wage is a problem. An extra $60 a week for some people is a lot. A 60 extra bread, well, they cost $2 now. That 30 extra bread, or you can say you can buy 5 more bread, a couple extra tin of milk, some cheese, a couple extra eggs, which means the child gonna get more protein, which means the child has a better chance of doing well in school. These things have ripple effect. And that is why we're also going to look at that. Because it seemed like there was some radar and those who work for the least to take away their benefits. And that is why this labor hearing administration will put those things back in place to benefit our workers. So these workers, I'm so happy for them. All of us are happy for them that they will be receiving, on average, a check of about $12,000. It's a significant amount to receive at this time. They work for it. They're not asking for it. They're not begging it. They're saying, pay me what I work for. That is what we are seeking to implement, Mr. Bad. The other one you asked about was Haiti. When I came in and started my meetings with CARICOM, Haiti was always on the top of the agenda. And I had discussed it before that the agreement was to help to strengthen the security situation in Haiti by strengthening the police with support from Canada, United States, and so forth. However, we see that the situation continues to be difficult. We know that our honorary consul the father of our honorary consul was abducted in Haiti. I want to report, for those who don't know, he was released, went to the United States for checkup. His son came here. I spoke to his son. He told me that his dad, at least physically, was doing well. So I wanted to report that good news. However, it continues to be a challenge, and I'm waiting until the foreign minister comes and gives his report as to the new direction. But I'm going to be also discussing with CARICOM as to the new direction, because this was what was agreed to, and as far as I know, nothing else had changed as far as our position as a region is concerned. So I will wait for an update from the foreign minister who recently had discussion. And when it comes to the land, I would have the Honorable Joy Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development, deal with that one.
Good morning, and thank you, Prime Minister. Sir, can you be more specific as to the problem you're referring to with NHC land?
I believe there was a period of time when there was an attempt to determine, for example, one piece of land, a plot of land might be owned by two different persons, and I think NHC was trying to sort out that kind of situation. That's what I understood. And and then there were bits of land that needed to be returned to NHC because of non-payments and that kind of thing. So what I'm asking is, if that situation is still in progress, the land that is going to be required under the new project involving the Trinidad company, where would that land come from, or would some of that land be part of that process that has been going on?
Thank you. So, just to correct you, sustainable development deals with lands, NHC, housing, and I suspect what you are trying to say is there's a challenge with persons who have land issued by NHC who want an sustainable development, who want a house constructed by NHC. That's not a challenge, because a couple months ago in the cabinet briefing, the CABSEC would have informed the nation that cabinet took a decision to just get rid of that unwritten policy that if you have land issued by sustainable development, that NHC could not build on your land. That doesn't exist anymore. So we are making it very easy for persons who want an NHC home, one of the 2,400 homes that we're now displaying in the NHC land fair going on right now, that you
Housing.
can get it. Housing fair, sorry. You can get your house constructed on land that you purchased from sustainable development. So maybe we would have to do a better job as a cabinet to ensure that the media has the information so that your questions are more informed. Additionally, as it relates to double booking and triple booking and challenges with titles, the NHC and sustainable and legal sat, and we recognize that some persons were waiting up to 4 years to get their titles. We now have about 6 developments, existing developments, where titles are being processed. But I would allow the Attorney General to speak more to that, because we recognize whatever the management or lack of management was in the former administration, it kept a lot of young people stuck in processes in the bank, not being able to access a student loan because their mother didn't have a title to their land, or not being able to construct a house with a mortgage from the bank because their titles weren't issued to them. So we recognize that there's a need to expedite that and to put more resources into issuing the titles. As it relates to the other part of your assumption about lands and double booking and triple booking, that has absolutely nothing to do with NHC, nor does it have anything to do with the East Coast Development Company. I think that's what you're referencing when you said the Trinidad Company, East Coast House Development. They are going to have access to their lands, right? And they're going to build their homes. But when it comes to sustainable development, we, as we said in December, are taking our time to go through that revocation list that was left by the former administration, the double booking and triple booking problem that was left by the former administration. And we're looking to regularize access to land and to ensure that everybody who wants a piece of the rock can get a piece of the rock. But mind you, we only have so much land. St. Kitts is only so big. So we are really happy that NHC is pushing this housing initiative, housing revolution, so that persons who have been waiting for years to get piece of land could actually just move forward and access a house. So I'm really hoping that the responses have answered your questions, and I really do hope that we have a better rapport with the media so that we don't ask uninformed questions, because that also throws the public off, and then they have the impression that this new revolutionary housing program is tied up with land issues, which it is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Clark. I have two questions that came through virtually. The first question is, can we have an update on discussion surrounding the minimum wage? And the second question is the restructuring process related to PAP complete? If not, is the minister responsible for that at liberty to say when it will be completed?
Right. Thank you very much. With respect to the minimum wage, the Minister of Labor is here, and I would allow the Honorable Marsha Henderson to deal with that question. The Minister, Philip, is also here, who can give some insight into the question of PAP. And the other minister, Minister Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, I think when he returns, can give even some more information with respect to that program. So, Rebel?
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Now, the work on the minimum wage started about 3 months ago when the cabinet took the decision to have the minimum wage advisory committee put in place. The committee comprised a number of stakeholders, including those from the union, the central bank, Social Security, trade, international trade, consumer affairs, the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Ministry of Labor and Employment in St. Kitts, and on Nevis. The committee started its work and would have completed its work, I think, about a month ago, just maybe 2 weeks ago, and prepared a recommendation for the cabinet to consider. The matter has not been brought yet back to the cabinet, but a number of consultations are ongoing with the persons who are likely to be affected by this. We are wrapping up the consultations, and the cabinet is likely to consider the recommendation made by the advisory committee in a short space of time. And so for now, we can't say what the recommendation is, but what we can say is that, and if the Prime Minister would allow me to say that, there's a general consensus. Okay. There is a general consensus that the minimum wage should be increased, and the cabinet is likely to take that on board. So the work is practically completed, save and except for the consultations that are being wrapped up, and then the cabinet would be in a position to consider the recommendation made by the committee.
What is important about this, and the minister has done tremendous work on this, a lot of work to consider. A decade almost, the GDP of St. Kitts and Nevis would have increased, and the minimum wage did not move. Again, those who work for the least are the least considered. A whole decade. And not 1 cent increase in minimum wage. And in 2015, I ran in that election as well. We heard about a livable wage. Well, if you ain't move the minimum wage, how you going to get to livable wage? Deceive the people. I was shocked when international monetary organizations were telling me that those on the low end of the wage spectrum were being left behind. This is vexing. A decade and no increase in the minimum wage. And a committee was in place, 2018, taking money from the maids at the hospital, minimum wage workers, taking money from the minimum wage workers when it came to the gratuity. The people who suffered the most were those who work for the least. And that is why this caring Labour government is moving so quickly. We are being told it's post-COVID. The economy is still a little bit difficult, made worse by the excessive restrictions that they held because they wanted to manipulate the conditions under which the elections were held. These things are coming out, they're clear. Read the IMF report. The IMF report said the reason why the economy bounced back is because the first decision made by this administration was to lift the restrictions on the 7th of August. These are facts. It's really hard to look at this minimum wage situation, a decade, and the least paid did not get a 1 cent, and they were promised a livable wage. This will not happen under Labour. I think there was a second question with respect to that.
Can you just repeat the question so that I'm clear on?
The second question, is the restructuring process relating to PAP complete? If not, is the minister responsible for that at liberty to say when it will be completed?
Thank you. So in short, essentially the restructuring process for the Poverty Alleviation Cash Transfer Program is not complete. It is an ongoing process, and I'd like to reiterate that we are trying to make this program sustainable as a sustainable social assistance program. For where we are at right now, we are still early on in terms of the restructuring. We would have started since January in terms of the new applications and received over 12,000 applications initially. But where we are now, we are coming up to at the first 6-month mark. You would recall that the program is now taking a sense where we are offering a short-term assistance to some persons so that more persons can benefit with the resources that we have allotted and attributed to this program. And so the end of June would mark the end of the first 6-month cycle. As we are going along and as we're executing the program, we recognize that there are some persons who have not been touched, and we are making an effort to see how we can have more persons who have not received, added for consideration. And so the ministry is planning to potentially reopen the application so that persons who were not able to complete their application can do so, as well as we can consider persons who have not received. So that is a process that is ongoing. We are obviously being able to identify challenges and identify persons who really are in need, who have not been able to receive. And so we are working to see how we can have those persons come in to also be able to submit some kind of completed application. We, as part of the process in terms of the restructuring, we did mention that we have a case management process so that that process has been successful in certain ways. We were able to support a small group of unemployed persons who were who've been beneficiaries to the program. Some of those persons have been able to find employment with the support of the case managers. And these persons would now be able to graduate off the program for this at this time, at the end of the first 6 months, so that we are then able to make room for other persons who have not received to be added. So the restructuring does continue, and we expect, of course, with other more sustainable areas for persons like the increase in minimum wage, eventually down the line, that the restructuring will continue as we continue to learn in the process and see how we can meet the needs of persons. But of course, as I mentioned, the ministry is working to see how we can potentially reopen the application process so that persons who did not complete and any new persons can be considered to be added. And the addition for new persons or persons who haven't been able to receive yet would be from the July payment. That was when the next 6 months in the year would begin. So just want to make sure that the public just looks out for that when that time comes. And of course, we maintain the eligibility criteria where we're prioritizing persons who earn less, households that earn less than $3,000 at this time. Of course, prioritizing persons who are more senior, the disabled, the unemployed, of course, and then employed, those with minors and children. So that is what we have when the restructuring continues. But of course, we continue to see how we can meet the needs of those who are certainly most in need at this time.
Let me say something, because the minister went into excellent depth about it. Presently, this is part of the social protection framework of our administration. Everybody in St. Kitts and Nevis is benefiting in some way from a program. Everybody. It is either, when you look at your electricity bill, there's an FVC, fuel variation charge, which is costing the government $7 million, sometimes $10 million a month. We have not passed that charge on or cost on to the people of St. Kitts. We understand that this is a post-COVID situation and people are still in transition. That's one. We still have, apart from the PAP, the Alternative Lifestyle Program, which continues. Fuel. Water is being heavily subsidized. Presently, we are buying water from Marriott because nothing was done for water over the last 7 years. When you add up all of these programs and the STEP, so when you add up all of these programs, it's at least $250 million. I want us to reflect on that number. Ask ourselves as a country, is this sustainable? This government is investing significantly to manage the cost of living, making sure that people can at least continue to have water, electricity, at least buy basic foods, be able to travel on a bus by controlling the prices. We have one of the lowest inflation rate in the whole of the OECS. It's probably the lowest. And it is such because we are investing $250 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. When we look at all of the protection that we are offering to the people here of St. Kitts. We have not abandoned the people. We will not abandon the people, even though we met an economy in deficit. National Bank, with its situation, very stabilized now. Development Bank, with its situation, tens of millions of dollars missing. Industries closing down. Tourism under pressure because of political manipulation. With all of that, we are still able to help our people to transition in this post-COVID. So the PAP is just a part of the overall social protection apparatus that we have here in St. Kitts.
Thank you, Prime Minister Drew, Honorable Marsha Henderson, and Honorable Iselin Phillip for your responses. We return to the floor to the media houses for further questions.
Good morning to all. Shani Karbi here from ZIZ Broadcasting. Concerning the build out of the smart homes, some have expressed concern over the track record of the Trinidad and Tobago company that will be responsible for the new homes. With so little information available about this company, what assurance can you give about the quality of the homes that will be provided? And can we also get more information about the plans for a performing arts center? Thank you.
All right. With respect to that, as you're speaking about the safeguards, I'll allow the Honorable Attorney General to handle that question. The second question was?
The Performing Arts Academy.
I would allow the Honorable Samuel to answer.
In terms of the agreement with East Coast, it is essentially an agreement between NHC and East Coast. Government has a very limited role in the agreement. However, the agreement was prepared and vetted by the Attorney General's office. There is strong protection in the agreement in terms of quality of homes, in terms of delivery of homes, in terms of the use of local contractors. All of that is contained in the contract. I feel certain that we have sufficient protections that will protect NHC, will protect the government, and will protect the homeowner built into the agreement. With any contract, there is always potential doubt as to whether the contractor can perform. Just because a contractor has built 10,000 homes or 5 homes in St. Kitts and they're building your home does not necessarily mean that they're going to build it in the proper way. That is why you are supposed to have a construction contract. And in that construction contract, you're supposed to have a project manager. And the project manager at the various phases of the building of that home is supposed to report to the homeowner whether the construction is being built according to the plans that are agreed by the what's your board called? The Development Control and Planning Board. All of those provisions are in place, and they're even strengthened more because it's a 2,400 home project. So I can assure the people of St. Kitts and Nevis that we thoroughly vetted the contract and ensured that there's sufficient protection for homeowners, NHC, and the government. Oh, yes. And there's an even greater protection. There will be built into the contract is that 2 model homes will be built. If the government and or NHC are not satisfied with the model homes, and by extension, the contractors that will be part of the construction of these model homes because of the new technology, and the potential homeowners, all the stakeholders, if they're not satisfied with the model homes, the contract comes to an end. And that is the primary protection that the people of this country have. And that was the fundamental aspect that we wanted to include to make us feel even more comfortable moving forward with this agreement. I also want to take this opportunity, if I can, Prime Minister. I hear a lot of chat about procurement. And I think it's important for the people of this country to understand what procurement is. In 2012, there was a Procurement Act passed. Procurement covers 3 things: goods purchased with treasury money. And when I say treasury money, I mean that's the people's money. Services that are purchased with the people's money. And construction, which is paid for by the people's money. This agreement with East Coast has none of those 3 elements. It is not a matter of procurement. It is a matter between NHC, which is a statutory corporation, and East Coast, and individual homeowners. There is no government money, no treasury money that is being paid out for there to be procurement issues. And I find it strange that persons who were in government in the past and should have a great understanding, because I can tell you, the people at this table We probably hear Procurement Act more than anything else in our offices. I'll give you an example. The office wanted, and my PS is here so she could confirm, the fridge when I got into the office, the mini fridge, was not working. So the office had to procure a mini fridge. In order to procure the mini fridge, the office had to seek to get a quote from TDC, a quote from Hosfors, a quote from somewhere else, review the quotes, and then choose an option. And the whole point of that process is to ensure that Treasury money, the people's money, is being spent in the best way. That is how procurement works. So when, for example, the government wishes to build a training school for the police, the government then, the structure under the Procurement Act, sends out tenders and saying, these are the plans for the police training school. We want we're sending out a tender for contractors to submit how much it will cost for them to construct this building. When government money is being spent, that's how the process works. So then the tenders come in and the procurement board meets and they determine which contractor they're choosing to go with to build this building. That is how procurement works. This structure is not that type of structure. It is not taxpayers' money that is going. It is individuals who are buying these homes. NHC, who is not subject to the Procurement Act, who is facilitating these homes being built. And it just surprises me that there's references to Bastille High. Actually, I find it absurd, the comparison, because the Bastille High, whereby I think $21 million has been paid out to date by the people of this country. Not a thing is over there. What you said to move dirt, Prime Minister?
Move dirt.
Manage dirt. That was Treasury money being paid out. No procurement. And the same people who facilitated and supervised that are the persons making noise about this project, which has nothing to do with procurement. And unfortunately, that's the society we live in. People like to make noise without knowing the facts. And that is why we come here in these meetings to give everyone the facts. And I would hope that once everyone leaves here, they'll go to the housing fair so they could get even more facts. Because we're going to go there. Because the only way we can progress as a people is to start making decisions and start thinking in relation to facts and not emotion, not sensationalism, not political maneuvering and propaganda, but being a people who try to get the facts before they comment. And it is our job to try and give you the facts. I just wanted to make that point, even though it's ancillary to your question.
Yes, pleasant morning to all. As a minister responsible for the creative economy, I would like to shed some light on the Creative Arts Center. And the Creative Arts Center, we know, would have been a long-standing issue. As a practitioner myself, who would have developed island expressions from since 2007, 2008, I would have been responsible for nurturing and harnessing a lot of young talent on the island. I know the need of a Creative Arts Center. Coming into office, I had the privilege of bringing that to the fore and having discussions with the Prime Minister about the Creative Arts Center. And we are now at a place where we are ready to see that come to life. I had a trip earlier this year to where I met developers who have agreed to build that Creative Arts Center and fund it. That process is ongoing. You would recognize that any type of construction process has a number of parts that one must consider. The building board and planning must be involved. And I understand that those plans are going through the due process to be completed there as well. Also, the whole technical design, and because it is external investors, we had to get our investment agency involved. And so we are just finalizing those processes. And I had the assurance in a conversation I had earlier this week with the Prime Minister that that process should be concluded in a matter of a week or two, and then we should be moving out to unveiling the plans to the general public and hopefully getting to breaking ground for construction sometime within this year, 2023. And so I'm pleased to announce that all goes well. St. Kitts and Nevis will see a creative arts center being constructed, that beginning phase starting 2023 this year. And I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable AG and Honorable Minister Duggins, for your responses. We return to the floor to the media for an additional questions.
Good morning, LaShawn Dixon, St. Kitts News Observer. My first question related to the housing program as well, just seeking some clarifications. As AG just said, the NHC is a party to the contract with the East Coast Housing Development, but how will the developers recoup their funds of the 2,400 houses that will be built? And also, will the contract between the NHC and the East Coast Housing Development be made public for scrutiny? And as the Prime Minister said last week, due diligence on the company was done. The due diligence report we also made public. And what is the record of the East Coast Housing Development of building homes? And secondly, earlier this year, the National Assembly passed Freedom of Information legislation, which the government said it was serious about. But while the legislation is not fully operational as yet, in the spirit of the legislation, the Observer and the Nation are still seeking the numbers as to the certificates of registrations the Prime Minister has signed since taking office, and also the total number of passports sold under the CBI program. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The first question was in relation to the East Coast Agreement, whether the public can scrutinize the contract. In the Freedom of Information Act, which was referred to in the latter part of your question, there are certain exceptions as to what the public can access. And certainly, if a private entity, a private commercial entity, is entering into an agreement, there are certain trade secrets that are contained in that agreement that should not be made public so that their competitors can know about what their secrets are. So I was trying to find the section of the Freedom of Information Act which deals, commercial communication. So how the Freedom of Information works is if you, the journalists, wish to get a contract with East Coast, you can make your application to the information officer in the particular ministry, say the Ministry of Housing. The information officer is going to come back to you and say, in the Freedom of Information Act, there are certain types of information that cannot be provided. And those are information about security and intelligence, defense, international relations, crime and special investigative powers, confidential government documents, prejudicial commercial communications. And that is one of the matters that you cannot have access to. And I hope you understand why, because commercial entities, when they enter into contracts, they provide information in those contracts that if the general public were to know, their competitors can use it to their advantage. The second part of the question.
How the developers would acquire the funds?
Yes, the contract contemplates, or the solution actually contemplates that it will be individuals who purchase it. So it is basically a facilitating agreement. NHC, you apply to NHC, and Prime Minister, I don't know if you have the numbers, But the numbers that I've heard thus far is over 1,100 persons have already applied.
More than that, almost 2,000 now.
So we're almost at the number of persons who are actually going to purchase the homes
Today.
So all of that information is available to the general public at the housing fair. What's it called?
Housing.
The housing fair that's taking place right now at NHC. So it is not government buying the houses or NHC buying the houses. It's individuals buying the houses. And that is why it is one of the solutions. There will be other solutions for persons who are not bankable. This is the solution for persons who are bankable and can take a mortgage loan from a credit union or a bank, and they can purchase their one-bedroom house for $111,000, their two-bedroom for $213,000, and their three-bedroom for $297,000. That is what this program is about.
All right. Thank you very much, AG. So as you can see, and I think the AG has cleared that up very, very well. With respect to, I think we discussed the numbers the last time, and I direct you where you can get the exact numbers the last time. And that is why I want to ask, if you really want to know the numbers, I will direct you directly to the source where you can get the exact number. I would say that. But I want to clarify something. You said selling passports. We're not in the business of selling passports. And I want to really decry that statement. It is critical so that when people listen internationally, they would understand that this is not a banana republic. We're not in the business of selling passports. People invest, and like other countries, you are invited to access citizenship. Canada has a citizenship program. United States have one. Europe has. Through investment. When I graduated in the United States, part of my contract say you will get a green card and a pathway to citizenship. Said that to me. Don't go back to St. Kitts. They don't work in the United States. You'll get a green card in 3 or 4 years, and then you have a pathway to citizenship. That is one of the ways in which people can access citizenship, for example, in the United States. One of our ways is through investment. And then if you choose to become a citizen through investment, you're invited to. You go through a whole vetting process, internationally recognized vetting process, due diligence by reputable organizations that are recognized. And after passing through that process, you have applied, then you can be granted your citizenship. And then after that, you can choose whether you want to apply as part of your right now, whether you should have a passport or not. And so really, I want to say to all of us and to those who are listening that we are not in the business of selling passports. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister and Attorney General, for your responses. We continue with the questions. The next media house, please.
Good morning, Ralston Rankin, Sugar City FM. Before I go to my question, I just want to congratulate the Minister for Tourism on job well done with the new airline, which seems to be helping a lot of people. I did a feedback and asked some questions on how is it, the service. Only thing is if we can get a little bit more flights on the different days, increase the flights. So I'm sure you probably will work on that, but congratulations, job well done, by the way. My question, Mr. Prime Minister, the next CBI dividend, I know you can answer that one there. And also the next question, okay, VAT was introduced to assist in meeting of financial obligations to the IMF. So now that the IMF loan was duly paid off, why are the citizens still subjected to this tax payment? So that's my question.
All right. Just to clear up on the CBI dividend, we know what a dividend is, and I think I explained it clearly. That is why we want our people to become financially literate. And we are going to start financial literacy at the school level and for our adult population to also have access. For those people who have shares in any company, you are paid a dividend based on how the company. So it is not something that has to be guaranteed, evaluated. The company, for example, National Bank, under the last administration, suffered a loss in 2022. Hence, at the AGM, at the end of year, National Bank, for the first time in its history, could not pay dividend. So what we do is that we look and see what the state is based on when we pay out for all these social programs and so forth, and we see what might be available, and then from there comes a dividend if we have sufficient. But that is how a dividend works. After you would have taken care of business, what is there, how much you made, and how can you divide that excess. So it depends on that. And so we continually assess that and determine when would be appropriate time to pay a dividend. And that is how a dividend is actually managed. With respect to the VAT, I don't think that the VAT was introduced mainly to pay back IMF. The VAT was introduced as a program to manage how we handle tax, get rid of a lot of other types of taxes and brought them into one thing called the VAT. We are looking at the VAT closely because when the fiscal space allows us, and I have asked the IMF to help us to do an in-depth study of our tax regime. I have seen a preliminary report. They are finalizing the report, which they will send, to see what will be the best tax regime, especially in terms of rate that we can have. One of our aims that we mentioned in the manifesto was that we want to reduce the VAT from 17 down to 13% and lower if we can. However, when you enter into a government with Development Bank on the ropes, National Bank first deficit in its history, deficit in the government budget, country under restrictions, and we are slumping. The first order of action is to stop the bleed. Just stop the bleed. And we have moved to stop the bleed and to stabilize the economy and to put the economy back on a stable, positive path. We have significant challenges because a lot of the other sectors were neglected. We were almost becoming dependent on one sector only, which is the CBI sector. We should have learned that we should never depend on one sector because tourism, we know when a hurricane hits, can be affected. And we always had the thought that we would diversify the economy so that you don't depend on one leg. If you're standing on one leg and you get knocked out, you fall. But you go to stand on a lot of legs. And so that is why we want to diversify the economy so that you can have agriculture, creative economy, CBI, tourism, the cannabis, medical cannabis industry, small business, energy as a sector, manufacturing, we're hoping that that can come back. We're working towards that. Other foreign direct investments like East Coast investment, where they're bringing in fresh money. Fresh money needs to come in and circulate. Can you imagine if you have a bucket with water and you leave it there, the water becomes stagnant and afterwards it starts to smell. Just like the economy, fresh replenishment. That's what foreign direct investments are about. East Coast is a foreign direct investment. These are the kind of things. So we know we have significant challenges ahead because the economy was brought to depend too heavily on one sector, which is a travesty. And so we are sharing that information. That's a very good question. Rankin, excellent question. And I thank you for the opportunity for me to really expound and clarify these issues. But we are working very hard to diversify the economy because one leg can't stand. And we are getting there. And we ask for our people to join us as we strive to establish a sustainable island. This is a matter of existential. The threat is existential. The temperature of the earth is expected to go above 1.5. You know what that means? More hurricanes, stronger hurricanes, more frequent hurricanes, less water because of rainfall. That's why we're going to drill in Keon. The compressor is now in Keon. They shut down that process for the last 7 years. That's why we're now going to sign to build a desal plant, 3 million gallons. We're not looking for excuses wherever there are challenges. We are stepping up to the plate, but our people need to know where we are at. Solutions, that is what we are. Tough decisions to be made. And so that is where we are at. And once we continue to grow and develop and we envisage to implement what we want to implement. But I want the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to know that we are always working tirelessly hard to improve. And we will not relent. We look for solutions. We'll travel and meet partners. We'll meet partners here, just like in June, we are bringing the OECS authority here. I have brought a lot of people here, investors and all, to have discussions as to how they can partner with us in building out St. Kitts and Nevis, from healthcare to investment to energy. And the ministers are working hard in their respective ministries. Look at what they're delivering, big things. Each ministry is delivering a big thing. Some governments hope to deliver a big thing in its whole 5 years, but each ministry is delivering a big thing. If you go to housing, Honorable Jeffrey, housing revolution. You go to Honorable Marshall, planes and boats and hotels, and she got more to deliver that she ain't discussed yet. Just give her a few more days, you're going to hear what she talk about. When you go to the Honorable Conway Smader talking about water and energy. When you go to the Honorable Samuel Duggins, he's talking about Performing Arts Center, supposed to start this year. When you come all the way around, number 6, the Honorable Dr. Zenzil Douglas traveling to encourage investments, establishing manufacturing and so forth. And then you come up to constituency number 8, where among things, renal transplant, new hospital, cardiac service, and the list goes on and on. Stabilizing CBI and so forth. Gratuitous payment, minimum wage in collaboration with labor. These are big things that each ministry is looking at. That sometimes a government hope they can deliver 1 or 2 in the whole 5. Look at the last 5 years, no minimum wage, no performing arts center, no hospital, no airlines. And the list goes on and on. No good governance laws. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on. No Bastia High School. No, So you ask, what were you doing? What were you doing? Comes down to one thing, they were wasting time. But I'm happy that this cabinet is working hard, and I want to thank each minister for the significant amount of work that he or she. Thank you very much, Rankin, for the opportunity. So if there are no other questions, maybe you can give the ministers a chance just to highlight quickly what they're
Yes.
doing in their various ministries. Oh,
I
Mr.
think
Matt.
we have one last media house willing to pose a question. Or we'll make room for 2. I see Mr. Bart has a question as well. Okay.
Well, we're updating, can I ask?
Good morning, everyone. Kevin Brown, WinFM. Has the UN communicated its assessment on the Cameroonian situation? Can we get an update on that? And how on track is the Federation in reducing the food import bill by 25% by 2025? Do we have any figures for how much it was reduced in 2022 or any projections for 2023? Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. With respect to the Cameroonians, our African brothers and sisters who came here under the circumstances that we know, I would say that They are here in St. Kitts and Nevis. They're at the St. Peter's Community Center at this point. We have asked the UN to intervene. The UN has intervened, and the UN started its assessment last week. And as a result, we are waiting for the UN final report. So we have not received that final report. However, I would continue to say that these are our African brothers and sisters, one way or the other. And I would say to our people, when we look at other countries, let's say they're entering some other country, and we see sometimes because of their skin color, they're being treated a particular way. We have to be cognizant of that. I will not be recorded as a prime minister of this country who discriminate against people because of that. Far from the truth. I know it was not asked, but I want to register. They'll be treated with respect and humanity. However, I understand that we have to respect our laws. But respecting our laws does not mean treat people inhumanely. Came here under tragic circumstances. Their boat capsized. 16 died. We have 3 bodies here presently, where I'm trying to seek what is their religious status, if they are not claimed by anybody at all. If they are Muslims, we'll give them a Muslim funeral. We'll have to bring in an imam or somebody of that stature who can carry out those religious rites. So we respect them down to the very last. If they are Christians, then we are Christian society. If they are African traditional religion, it might be difficult to get somebody who does that, but we'll intern them humane. So we are waiting on the UN report with respect to what will be our final. But I met with them. They are well-educated people. They are teachers, IT specialists, lawyers, and so forth. Most of them speak 2 languages, French and English. And I think that they're educated. I had enough, conversation was long enough for me to decipher that they're well-educated. They seem like they come from maybe the middle class of Cameroon mainly, who had the opportunity to go to university and so forth, but because of the circumstances, they were heading elsewhere. As you know, they came here by accident. Nonetheless, we are going to cooperate with the UN in terms of determining what will be the final situation. So that is where we are. Was another
Food
question?
and import bill?
Yes, I would allow the Honorable Minister of Agriculture to touch on that.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity again to update the general public on the works that would be happening in the Ministry of Agriculture and its various departments. Now, in 2020 it was, CARICOM would have adopted the 25 by 25 agenda. And in 2022, 3 days after I would have taken office, I had a chance to visit Trinidad, where we had discussions about that agenda and our input into that agenda. The sad thing is, you recognize you wouldn't have heard about that agenda before 2022. And I find that to be a travesty, because it means then that we had really no buy-in from St. Kitts Nevis into the CARICOM's agenda. In fact, when I got to Trinidad, it was interesting because they said that I'm the first Minister of Agriculture that they would have met from St. Kitts.
Wow.
And it tells you what really was happening. However, I'm confident to say that we have since then spent some time analyzing the data, because with anything, you have to know where you are, where you've been, to construct properly where you're going. And in analyzing the data, we see a clear path forward for us to be a success story in that 25 by 25 agenda. Beyond analyzing the data, we have met with livestock farmers, we have met with fisheries, the fisher folk, and we are meeting with the crop farmers next week. And our plan coming out of those meetings will be to collate all that data, properly fashion the entire way forward, which we will launch in July. Just to give an outlook though, beyond all of that, we have signed an MOU with Evergreen in collaboration with the African Export-Import Bank, yes, for a fish farm and processing facility, which is destined to be one of the largest of its kind in the region. And that will increase our productivity substantially. We've also, which should be launched in another few weeks, had the support of the government of the Republic of China and Taiwan for a hatchery, which will also increase our ability and improve our capacity in the area of poultry, and which would again help us to reduce imports. We are also launching our greenhouse villages and that concept. And again, we plan to break ground on that in July. Along with that, we are now instituting a drought resilience project, considering where we are currently. We are suffering one of the worst droughts in the last 20 to 30 years, and that is impacting our agriculture sector. I met with the Prime Minister last week, and we met with Finance and the Water Department to bring all stakeholders together to ensure that we bring a proper and sustainable approach to drought management. And so once we would have completed this series of meetings to hear directly from the persons on the ground, their own grievances and their own ideas, we want to put a very comprehensive plan, which we will highlight and launch this coming July. So I could tell you, I am very optimistic. The data shows that we have a clear path forward to being a success story. But we want to make sure that all stakeholders have a vested input in what we're putting forward and not have it just based on internal data or past history. We want every single stone to be unturned so that we know we are making the best decisions to move the sector forward. But I am hopeful, I am positive, and I can tell you almost with assurance that St. Kitts will stand tall when it comes to that 2025 by 25 agenda as one of the main success stories in CARICOM. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister Duggins. I will allow for Mr. Batt to ask his final question, and that can be tied into the closing remarks for each minister.
Okay, thank you very much. Just two questions, actually. First, we have been asked by bus drivers if is there any chance or any raise to the bus fares coming in the near future. That's one. And secondly, for the Minister of Tourism, can you address whether it is possible or not, given the current circumstances, to double the amount of tourists that we have arriving from the UK or from European destinations? Any plans for further growth there?
Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Batt. The overall strategy for right now, as it relates to visitors from the UK, our biggest source market is actually in the US, with the second market coming from the region, and sometimes it's between Canada and the UK. What we started last year was an initiative where we're trying to promote both destinations, that's St. Kitts and Nevis, within the UK, and do an overall study to see what the visitors there are actually looking for, as their demands are sometimes different from those who come from the US. And so we've embarked on a number of initiatives starting last November, where we did a road trip into London and the surrounding areas, meeting with travel agents and different persons to stimulate the demand for the destination there in that part of the UK. And we're hoping that would translate into stayover visitors. So we've had influencers as well from there who've been working with us in tourism to, sell the destination. And so we are hoping to get a lot more visitors. Apparently, the numbers in Nevis, the UK visitors have a bigger interest in Nevis as a destination. Looking at the demographics, I think it's a much older set of persons, old like me, of course. I don't mean old, middle-aged persons who come from the UK and show an interest for Nevis. And so we're working on a strategy to stimulate demand for the UK visitors, including, of course, airlift. And that is a challenge. And when we met with British Airways, they informed us that there was an arrangement whereby, because there's a double hop from Antigua and then into St. Kitts, previously, most of the passengers on BA were going to Antigua. But what they reported to us is that a number of the seats, if not 3/4 of the seats, were being taken up by visitors coming to St. Kitts. So it's showing that the work that we're putting in there is we're getting some success there as well. So we will continue our efforts. We have plans for later this year to go into the UK market again. We have our influencers there. We actually have a team that works there in the UK as well. And so we're hopeful, and we're also working on the issues as it relates to airlift beyond the British Airways once we can get the numbers as well to bring more visitors from the UK. We're doing that as well in the Canadian market. And we're looking at new source markets, including, I think, Italy and those in the Mediterranean, where we're seeing a lot of cruise passengers expressing an interest in coming back. So a lot of those persons coming on the European lines are expressing the interest. And that is what we do with cruise tourism. You come for a day, we sell the destination, hoping that you will come back and stay over. And so we're seeing some success with this strategy as well. So if Mr. PM, if I can just wrap up my,
Yes, of course.
my area. Following up on the issue of airlift, I think it was Rankin, when he spoke of the flights, the Inter-Caribbean flight that was recently launched. It was the 30-seater. And since the inception, since we've launched it, it has come full every single day. And we have the flight 3 days per week. And every single time the flight is filled to capacity with people not being able to get on. And so what we've done, coming next week, we're going to increase the flight to a 50-seater. I think that is called the ATR, whereby more persons would get the opportunity as the demand is there. And we've not been able, and so we have good news. We've not actually spent $1 on the MRG that's in place with Inter-Caribbean. We have some other news that we will be coming with later on, but we continue our efforts to improve airlift to the destination, both regionally and internationally. We would have the announcement as it relates to additional lift regionally and additional lifts internationally within maybe another month or two. The strategy as it relates to airlift also helps with stay over. The reason that we are behind, and when I say behind, not where we want to be, because the numbers have shown that airlift, stay over would have increased, stay over visitors increased when you do the comparison from 2019 and 2023, we would have seen an increase in stay over visitors during the months of January, February, and March, when we did that analysis last month. But where we are in terms of getting more stay over visitors has a lot to do with our airlift and our challenges with airlift. It also has to do with lack of not having enough room stock. And so we continue on our strategy to get investors and partners with us in the industry in the building of additional hotels so that we can improve our room stock. So we have our Minister of Economic Development and our Prime Minister working along with us in the ministry to get investors who will come and build the hotels. So it's a twofold thing. You work on airlift and you work on your room stock to help with stayovers. As it relates to preparation of the upcoming music festival, we are ahead of schedule. I'm happy to report that we are ahead of schedule. In fact, this morning, just before I came here, we had a meeting with our sponsors, a corporate partnership breakfast. We have a number of stakeholders who have come on board and are partnering with us for the music festival. We introduced the logistics committee this year, who is helping with the management of the overall festival. And so you would have seen that we've started work on the venue. on the enhancement of the parking space at the Bastille High, and the logistics team continues to meet regularly and provide updates. We intend to put out our fringe events calendar. It's been finalized, and we're hoping to have that announced and published within a few days, maybe by mid next week, so that we can have all persons and even sponsors maximize on the fringe events. This year, we're celebrating 25 years, and so we want to do a toast. Not that we want to, we will be doing a toast every single night in celebration of the festival. We are proud a number of festivals around the region have come and they're no longer around. And so our festival, just like our people, we're resilient and we've reached a milestone. And so this year for the 25th anniversary, we will be doing a toast sponsored by 3 different corporate sponsors, whereby we would have a 45, and you would hear more about it, but we would have a 45-minute line session as a part of the overall production, which would be like a party atmosphere. So we'd have fireworks, confetti, and a toast to the St. Kitts Music Festival with our DJ. We have the return of the gospel element as well. So it's not going to be on the Sunday night because, of course, we have our fringe events like White Sands. But the Sunday before, we'll be partnering with the Antioch Baptist Church, and they will be doing a gospel extravaganza for all of our gospel lovers. And so we're happy that the Antioch Baptist Church is on board with us this year, just to introduce that element of the gospel element back into the music festival. Of course, like we've been saying, the celebration start from the 17th, which is the Sunday before, starting with this gospel concert right up until this Sunday night with our partners who are doing all the fringe events. There's something to do every night from the Sunday up until the following Sunday. We've introduced additional lift to the destination, and if you go on now, you would see that seats are sold out. People are calling and complaining that they're unable to get here. And so I've asked a team to go out. I think it's early June. We're going to go and meet with our travel partners to see how we can have this remedied. Of course, we can't just introduce another flight. Flights are loaded 6 months in advance and it can affect schedule. But we're going to try to find a resolution, even if it means bigger aircrafts, so that we can accommodate the demand for the festival. The 420 space, which was very controversial, that is still ongoing. And when I say 420, it's really a space for smokers. We have done the consultations and the legal framework is being put in place, and you would hear more about that shortly. But what it means, smokers, whether it's cigarettes, cannabis, cigars, vape, whatever legal substance you smoke, there would be a prescribed space at the music festival for you, for all those persons. We did the consultations with all the relevant stakeholders, and the legal framework will be in place in time for the music festival. You'd hear more about it when we go to Parliament shortly. And I think that's it. As it relates to tourism, we will have a summer. I know we're on this slow period right now because cruise tourism came to an end. We still have some ships calling, not as many. We, however, continue our efforts as it relates to stayovers. We have a summer of fun lined up, starting with the music festival, where we'll be partnering with this Nevis as well as the destination. We have Nevis Culturama, we have the Nevis Mango Festival, we have the St. Kitts Restaurant Week, we have CPL. So notwithstanding cruise tourism, oh yes, and we have football, CONCACAF hosting a cup here as well. So notwithstanding cruise tourism, we're on the slow season in tourism. We want to ensure that we still have people coming to the destination so that, economic activity continues. And so we have a summer of fun And like I said, we have additional lift as well for this season. So look out, those of you, our stakeholders, our partners, see where you fit in. And the hoteliers, restaurateurs, those on the beach, taxi and tour operators, you would still have an opportunity notwithstanding the slow season. As it relates to labor and employment, as I said earlier, we've wrapped up our work on the minimum wage and the tripartite committee has met. We will continue, we're meeting actually to complete the comprehensive review of all the labor laws as has been happening for a number of years. We're hoping to go straight into social security reform, which falls in tandem with, of course, the minimum wage, the increase in the minimum wage. So I think that's it for us in terms of announcements that we can make now. There are other things happening, as the Prime Minister would have said, but those things you would be advised of as time goes by.
Thank you very much. I think we can continue that. Hey.
All right, so then I guess that means I'm next. Yes, as a minister, I've been gifted some really interesting ministries which I have been in love with all my life. And I will start here now talking about the creative economy, because we had some discussion earlier with the creative economy and the delivery of a creative arts center. But beyond that, the creative economy is a new construct that we put together just last year on coming into office. And again, being data-driven, we are getting ready to launch the creative economy as a construct that it is, and our plans and programs and agenda. Along with that will be the launch of our National Carnival. Now, this may sound new to a lot of people because we're used to hearing this later in the year. But this year, we've decided to launch National Carnival in June, along with the creative economy, so that we could capitalize on the influx of persons from the music festival and look at making our National Carnival more of a tourism product than it has been ever in the past. So look out for that launch in June, along with the entire launch of the creative economy with a number of exciting projects and programs to come. I want to also talk about sports. The Honorable Minister would have mentioned some of the activities happening this summer, football, CPL. But we want to also assure you that the condition that we met our sporting facilities in, when you look at all the posts that we saw on social media concerning the Kim Collins Stadium, it was disheartening. But when one considers that this has been an accumulation of neglect for over 7 years, we recognize that it is time now to change course. And I'm happy to tell you that we are ready and prepared to have the work done again, starting next month, June, to revitalize the Kim Collins Stadium. It will be done in phases, and we will be fixing everything from the buildings to the track. Track alone, when we received the report from Mondo, was upward of $2 million. So we understand the type of expense that neglect can cause to our government and people. And we have been looking at ways that we can assure ourselves that we are able to get that done before the next athletic season. So hopefully building some new construction there as well, and the track will be ready for 2024. And I think that is something that we're proud of. Again, talking about our stadiums, Warner Park Football Stadium would have been out of commission for some months again due to neglect. I'm also happy to note that coming next week, the light matter with Warner Park will be resolved, and there shall be light in the park again. Yes. And so you see, you have a government that's very hard at work for the benefit of our people. And I don't want to leave out the rest of the stadiums around the country. Honorable Prime Minister, I know you'll be getting a new football stadium in Connery.
Thank you.
And I am pleased to announce that that will be delivered, as well as some upgrade to your cricket stadium as well. So your people should be quite happy. Honorable Senator, down in St. Paul's, we would have had some conditions. We are coming to those. And a number of other stadiums around the country, we will be doing some upgrades and making sure that they're fit for play for our young sport talent that we have developing. And because I don't want to take up all the time, because we could go on for days talking about the work being done, I want to move on from there. I think I would have discussed agriculture somewhat, so I wouldn't go back into that too much right now. Safe to say that the fisheries area, we have done some work on Old Road, we have done some work on Bastia, and we are moving into the Date Bay fisheries area over the next coming months to ensure that they have the facilities required to make sure that they could deliver on fish for our people. Sandy Point is another area of consideration that should be next after Date Bay. And as I move into small business, I want to say to you now, please, if you're a small business owner, go and register with the Ministry of Small Business. That ministry was created to guide a process for small business development in this country so that we can help to streamline our business people into a way that they could grow from small to medium to large businesses. And so that ministry, while not officially launched as yet because there's still some development processes, we do have a functioning ministry and you can go and register. I am also happy to say that there is some facilitation with a soft loan with the development bank. I understand that there was quick take-up of the first tranche of monies, and our wonderful Minister of Finance has assured me that a new tranche has been placed there for our business people. So register with the Small Business Ministry. Get involved in these loans. Get your businesses up and running, because the small business sector will be the driving force of this economy come 2023, 2024, and beyond. But we have to get it right. We have to make sure that you're properly trained. We have to make sure that you're properly compliant with all the different areas of our society. And we have to make sure that we come together so that one could help the other and have a vibrant sector of small businesses. And last but not least, we are headed to Parliament shortly to lay the final pieces to the legislation to really get our cannabis industry activated. For years upon years, you've heard it talk. But 2023, we're going to be walking the walk and delivering a sustainable cannabis industry for our country, St. Kitts and Nevis. And with that, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve you in this capacity as minister. And I want to assure you, you have my fullest commitment to delivering transformation as I would have committed to across the board, every single ministry and sector that I've been given privilege to lead. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Prime Minister, and to our media houses for providing this update from the Ministries of Sustainable Development, Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency Empowerment. Now, as it relates to the Ministry of Sustainable Development and the drive to regularize land, we are continuing our land stock assessment, and this also speaks to commercial and residential land. We acknowledge the cries of the general public that they are really anxious to access land or purchase land. And we recognize that the issues that needed to be solved at time, but very shortly, we would be announcing when our distribution program will resume and when we would have completely addressed all the triple and double allocations and any other outstanding matters so that petitions could enjoy their right to land and empowerment through such. Additionally, we recognize the importance of professionalizing and regularizing certain sectors which fall under the purview of the Development and Control and Planning Board and physical planning, such as the architects. And we have been in extensive and ongoing conversation and meetings, bilateral meetings with architects, draftsmen, physical planning, sustainable development, surveyors, to ensure that when we move to the next step of registration, that architects have provided the general public with all the information that would be needed to ensure we again professionalize this additional part of sustainable development, which speaks to sustainable construction and development. The ministry is also actively preparing for our first voluntary national review that's in July at the UN headquarters. We are joining about 40 countries in presenting this VNR, Voluntary National Review. We are perhaps the last of 3 countries to present, and this really speaks to where we are as a country in terms of attaining our sustainable development goals, all 17 of them. It really presents a snapshot of St. Kitts and Nevis, where we are, where we want to go, and where we will be in 2030 when the entire world has to account for sustainable development. In relation to constituency empowerment, I'm very happy to say that the department continues its community engagement work. You may have seen our empowerment officers out in the community, engaging with the public, assessing what needs to happen at the community level, assessing what needs to happen in terms of community empowerment and engagement with civil society. And this is done in partnership with the various government departments so we could streamline and prioritize service and access to services. So I'm very happy that constituency empowerment is continuing this line of work. As it relates to climate action, the department is working towards the framework for the sustainable island state. You have heard many times our Prime Minister and all other ministers speak to sustainable island state. And it's premised on climate resilience. And Prime Minister mentioned just a couple minutes ago about the reality that we face globally. We are going to pass a 1.5 threshold in terms of the increase in temperature. And that means really negative news for St. Kitts and Nevis. And it affects everything from housing to tourism to agriculture, the water we have, air we breathe. So it's a matter of survivability. So this government has recognized the importance of framing sustainable island state and spelling out what it means to every single citizen. Every single citizen would understand why it's important for sustainability. The climate justice work continues with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action. And next month, we are going to be hosting a very important group of high net worth donors who are coming to St. Kitts, well, to meet the Prime Minister, that's one, and also because he's a very big champion of climate work and sustainability, but also to engage with our civil society and our community groups and provide direct financial support to addressing climate change. And I want to use this opportunity to acknowledge our local partners at CIWIL chapter St. Kitts, CIWIL, the St. Kitts chapter, who are part of the grantee support for the climate work. We are accessing funds every time we travel, every time we speak on behalf of St. Kitts and Nevis. We are garnering more support from the international community, and next month we will be happy to speak more about this. And finally, June 5th, we will be celebrating World Environment Day, but the Ministry of Environment has an extensive month of activities planned. This also includes the confirmation that Cabinet has supported the next step towards banning single-use plastics, and we are now mapping where we go in terms of the approach to banning single-use plastics. This is a multi-stakeholder approach. It's government and community engaging on the most suitable roadmap and time frame. So I'm very happy to announce that both ministries are really collectively working towards sustainability, climate resilience, and environmental stewardship so that we can have a St. Kitts and Nevis to call home in 2023 2023, 2025, 2030, and beyond. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. So I'm happy to provide some brief updates on the Ministries of Social Development and Gender Affairs, Youth Empowerment, Aging and Disabilities. In relation to social development and gender affairs, I want to highlight the other, I would have spoken about the PAP program earlier, and just to piggyback off of what the Prime Minister would have mentioned just in terms of the social assistance, social protection apparatus. The ministry is also being able to support persons through other programs. As the reality is, unfortunately, we cannot support everyone on the poverty alleviation cash transfer program at the same time. But of course, for persons who may not be able to benefit at this point in time, we want you to know that we do provide other assistance programs. Specifically, our food voucher assistance program is back up, and we are welcoming persons to come in and seek assistance in that regard. So a food voucher assistance program is intaking persons at this time. We also have our school uniform assistance program that should be, applications should be open from next Monday. And so these programs are also part of our social assistance, social protection apparatus so that persons can, feel the squeeze eased through social protection and social assistance supports. So persons who may be interested and in need of this kind of assistance, we encourage you to contact social services at the office. The main office is at Limekiln. We also have satellite offices in the various communities where a social assistance officer is stationed there every day from 8 to 4. So in the various communities, if you're unable to come to Bastia. So we want to encourage persons so those programs are up and running so that you can access social assistance support in areas that you need. Also, when it comes to community development, a mandate of the ministry is to ensure that we can foster stronger communities and support families. Just this week, I would have released a statement on the observance of International Family Day. Our community development officers are working in the communities to host some various events, community-oriented, family-oriented events, so that we can, of course, build the social fabric, build togetherness, and kind of be able to bring back traditional values when it comes to family support and parental support. And so different events are being hosted, like family movie nights. We encourage persons, of course, to continue accessing a family pack. And of course, we're having some community walkthroughs that's being organized and hosted by the Department of Community Development, by our community development officers. So for more information about that, you can access information on the Facebook page for the Department of Community Development and Social Services, or of course, contact the offices for more information if you need. When it comes to the Ministry of Youth, Empowerment, Aging and Disabilities, the focus for the Youth Department right now is preparing for summer camp. Summer camp this year celebrates 40 years. And so the plan is to have some new activities. The camp is returning to a 2-week experience, and the dates are July 16th to July 31st. And so plans are ongoing for that. You can look forward to more details in the coming weeks. But at this time, I want to make a plea and express invitation for sponsors, particularly from the private sector, the NGO sector, for partnership and support, whether that be in cash or kind. The department certainly looks forward to these kinds of partnerships every year, and the camp cannot be successful without that kind of support, which has been provided in past years. And since this year, we are celebrating 40 years with even more activities where we're trying to build skills for our young people and trying to develop them and their leadership aptitude and abilities. We are seeking some sponsorship and support from our non-governmental and private sector partners. And so we are grateful to those who have already committed, but of course, we welcome additional assistance. So that's for summer camp, which you can look forward to in the upcoming weeks. In relation to our seniors program, I'm very happy to report that our seniors are having a world of a time at our daycare program, which is an initiative that was promised as part of the manifesto for the SKNLP, and know that we are in government. We've been able to fulfill that promise, and our seniors are benefiting very well from it. We would have last week taken our seniors to the movies. Some of them have never been, and so they really appreciated that experience. And we see that our seniors are, feeling a lot more revitalized with the focus and support that they've been given under this administration. Yes, and so, and on that, just the next thing to look forward to. So May 31st is celebrated as Centenarians Day. And I want to say that for that day, we've been able to gain the support of our Governor General, Her Excellency the Dame Marcella Liburd. She's partnering with our Elderly Services Department, and they will be going around to meet with and offer a nice token to all of the centenarians that we have across the Federation. We have 10, both in St. Kitts and in Nevis. And so our Governor General, along with some staff in our departments, along with we're also getting some support from the Ministry of Education for some children to also join in the various communities to go and see our centenarians and celebrate them as part of Centenarians Day. And so we really want to thank the Governor General for her willingness and her activeness for being able to come out. And actually, she said she wanted to meet every single one. So she will be joining the department on that venture, and that is May 31st. So you can look forward to seeing photos and information on that. When it comes to disability, we continue to raise awareness and advocacy. Just this month is actually observed as Blindness Awareness Month, and I'm happy to have the support of my colleagues, Honorable Masha Henderson and Honorable Samuel Duggins. Tomorrow, we'll be doing a blind walk in Bastia. And this is an event and activity that actually takes place in other islands. And so the idea, the concept is we will be blindfolded and guided by a person who is visually impaired as well as somebody who can see, not. And we will be just taking short walks around Bastia, as any other person who is blind would have to do so. We will be taking a walk, say, from the ferry terminal to the post office, to the bank. And so we will be engaging in that activity, which is hosted by or being coordinated by the Disability Services Unit within the ministry. And, this is actually very significant for us to do, especially to have ministers engage and commit to doing, because it allows us then to understand the experience of persons with such a disability so that we can identify areas and ways where we can ensure that our environment and our infrastructure and our services can better accommodate them. And it is very significant for us to have the Minister of Tourism commit, because, of course, in all the things that she's doing, she's also being able to think how we can have our products to be able to cater to those who are differently abled, and that's significant. And so we are certainly grateful to have that presence, and just so that these marginalized groups in our federation know that your government is certainly taking you seriously and really considering how we can be able to better facilitate your engagement and inclusiveness throughout all of society. Thank you.
Very much.
Prime Minister, next time, let the Borean Ministry go first, please. In relation to the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs, one of our biggest issues is the Sir Leal Moore Judicial and Legal Services Complex. Unfortunately, it was shut down in June 2022 because of a serious mole infestation. However, we have discovered that it has more problems than just mold. It requires a new roof, new AC system, new electricals, new internal walls, and potentially condemnation of the basement. So what we want to do at the ministry, and what we've started the process of doing, is finding out how we can bring that building back to be fully activated, and not just put a plaster on the wounds, which seems to have been done in the past. We want to do a fulsome repair so that it can last for another 30 to 50 years. What has happened because of that important building being shut down is that the magistrates' courts, the High Court for criminal matters and the High Court for civil matters, have had to be moved around different places in Bastia. I'm happy to report that the magistrates, the staff, and clients and parties are happy with the temporary relocation of the magistrates' courts to Fort Lands by the cenotaph. The civil high court has also used that facility periodically when there are trials. But the criminal court has moved to the police training school. And what I can inform the public is that when the new law term begins in mid-September, there will be a less temporary home for the criminal court as well as the civil court, and we are working on finalizing those plans. But I can promise that September will not meet us with this temporary interim solution to the courts. The courts are too important for the functioning of justice in our society. In relation to the Justice Committee, which is made up of the criminal judges, the criminal magistrates, the Bar Association, members of the police force, and persons from our office, we are seeking to soon present to Parliament a solution to the delays in criminal matters being heard. What has happened in the recent past is that persons have been waiting for trial for as long as maybe 7 years. Sometimes they wait for even longer for appeals, and these persons sometimes are not on bail. And what has happened is millions of dollars of taxpayers' money has been paid out to persons who potentially have been in prison for a long time, and then their matter is either discontinued or otherwise they have a very good lawyer, like the minister on my right, and they are then paid out hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is not sustainable, and the solution is to ensure that there's swift justice. Unfortunately, we have a draft criminal procedure rules and amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act, which we are going to discuss in our next Justice Committee meeting, which will be, I believe, first or second week of June. So hopefully that by September, the new criminal procedures will be in place. As I said, the judges are a very integral part of that process so that we can ensure that, like in, for example, Montserrat, where a person was charged in, I think, the end of September, and their trial was the first week in November. I can't promise that we'll get it done so swiftly, but we're going to aim for less than 6 months so people can receive justice in a swift time. That is the fairest solution for our society and for our people. People are innocent until proven guilty, and we have to ensure that they're able to be brought before the courts and get justice in a swift time. So we're working very diligently and hard on that. I'm pleased to report that the Access to Justice Bureau, which I spoke about in December during the budget debates, is finally coming to fruition. It is going to have 3 arms. The legal aid clinic, where persons who cannot afford commercial lawyer rates can attend and receive top-class service for civil matters in the family court as well as in the civil court. And then the persons in the clinic, the lawyers in the clinic, will then be going to the various community centers, but not just waiting for the persons to come on West Square Street, but going out in the communities and providing free legal advice to persons in the communities when they have disputes. The other arm will be the Public Defender's Office. This is an office where the government is going to pay for lawyers to be able to defend persons charged with criminal offenses at very low fees. So instead of persons being assigned solely by the court, there will be lawyers that are actually engaged by the government, sitting in the office for persons who cannot afford to pay for senior lawyers to defend them. That is something that has worked throughout the Commonwealth, and we are introducing it to St. Kitts and Nevis, so that everybody, no matter their income level, they can feel that they get justice and get proper representation. That is an important part of access to justice. And the third arm, I'm pleased to inform the general public, will be the Alternative Dispute Resolution and Restorative Justice arm of the Access to Justice Bureau. That will be if anybody has any dispute in our society, whether it be domestic, whether it be with your neighbor, whether it be somebody you gave a loan to, instead of going to court, you'll be able to go to a trained mediator and sit down and try to resolve your dispute amicably. The mediator also will be going to the community centers to introduce that mediation process to the community. We have a society where we tend to resolve our disputes in a least amicable way, and this is a way to bring that mediation culture into our society. And on the Prime Minister's instructions, that division will also deal with restorative justice. Restorative justice is when people who are victims of crime can then interact with potentially persons who caused the crime or did them harm, and they can try to find a solution where both of them can continue with their lives. This is one of the matters that was discussed when the Prime Minister was at the Crime and Violence Conference in Trinidad. And restorative justice is a way for trained mediators to bring the victims and the accusers and the convicts together, potentially when they come back out of prison, into the same room and discuss the issues that they've had and find a way potentially for persons to move on with their lives so that they're not communities, which is a fact in a small society like ours, where there are persons who might have broken into someone's home, spent 2 years in prison, now comes back into the same community, and those persons have to live together as one people. And this arm of the Access to Justice Bureau will be able to facilitate discussions so that persons can be integrated back in society and families can then move on in a more amicable way. So that is a very important aspect. In relation to the land registry, there were a lot of complaints prior to this government taking office that land processing of titles was slow. So I'm pleased to report that many lawyers have contacted me and said it has been sped up by some of the actions we have taken at the ministry. But to ensure that that stays that way, we recruited a professional land registry, actually a registrar from another jurisdiction, who is Kitishan. We've recruited that person who begins at the beginning of June. So effectively, we'll have two experienced land registrars so that instead of waiting months for your title, you'll be waiting days. And I think that is an important aspect of the ministry, that we want to ensure that there's ease of doing business when it comes to land transactions. In terms of Parliament, the next sitting of Parliament will be next week, Thursday, the 25th of May. We hope to table at least 7 bills. I'm hoping to table 12, but my legislative drafting team is saying to me that I'm in overdrive, and I tell them that is my personality. I want to get things done. So I'm promising 7. I'm hoping for 12, and these will be important pieces of legislation that will eventually be debated in Parliament. In relation to the Good Governance Transformation, as you are aware, the Anti-Corruption Act, Integrity in Public Life Amendment Act, the Freedom of Information Amendment Act, and the Official Gazette Act, have been passed and gazetted. An acting ombudsman has been appointed and is seated in office. We are also seeking to recruit a special prosecutor as well as an information commissioner to sit in those important offices. And to complete that process, we'll be presenting to Parliament a Whistleblowers Act as well as an Unauthorized Disclosure of Official Information Act. That will hopefully close the circle so that we can spend the next few weeks educating the civil service, persons on statutory boards, about their rights and responsibilities under this new paradigm of the good governance transformation that this administration is bringing to our country. And so that there will be no excuses when the switch is flicked. Everyone will understand their rights, everybody will understand their responsibilities, and we will be going forward in a sustainable way, in a transparent and accountable way, as has been promised by this administration. We are then going to start to work on a modern procurement act, as well as to strengthen the Public Accounts Committee legislation. So that is the next step. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the hardworking people in the Attorney General's office and the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs, inclusive of my permanent secretary, Ms. Diana Francis, who is here. They have my back, and we are working very hard to ensure that we fulfill our promise of there being a sustainable island state with respect to justice and legal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, AG. Go ahead.
Prime Minister, I forgot
Sure.
one thing that I thought is very important for us to mention. Special Olympics team is actually preparing to attend the Special Olympic World Games in Berlin in June. So I just wanted to make a plug so that the public is aware and to really thank the work of the coaches and Mr. Ivor Blake and Ms. Clarice Cotton, who are the national director and the board chair for Special Olympics. Our Special Olympics team, our national Special Olympics team, is known for bringing home gold medals. And so they are preparing diligently, and the plan is they registered to participate in 4 events. That's athletics, football, swimming, and tennis. And so I would ask the public to be encouraging your well wishes and prayers with the team as they will be traveling to Berlin, Germany. And I'd like to thank the support. This is an interministerial effort in terms of being able to send the team of 20 delegates to Berlin. We have the Department of Sports, the Prime Minister's Office, and of course the Ministry of Youth, with as well education, that has pulled together to be able to support our Special Olympics team. And they will be traveling and they're excited. And of course, our Special Olympics team is made up of young people who have intellectual disabilities. So I want to let the public know that that is a major sporting event that will be taking place where St. Kitts and Nevis will be represented, and we will be bringing home some golds, I'm sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, ministers. And you would have heard from the ministers who are present here. And again, I apologize for those who are not here, but would have the opportunity to update our public. Now, with respect to bus prices, I was asked about it. The Minister of Transport would be here, the Honorable Conway Maynard, and he can delve deeper into this. But as far as I know, there's no discussion with respect to that. I also want to point out here that Independence 40, yesterday we agreed on the theme, and I'm being told that we should announce it today. And therefore, the author of the theme is Mr. Damien E. Hughes of Challengers, St. Kitts. Mr. Damien E. Hughes of Challengers, St. Kitts. And his theme is Growing Sustainably, Developing Maturely, Building Resiliency, Independence 40. Encapsulate what we're about. And in shorter version, you can say sustainability, maturity, resiliency, independence 40. So congratulations to Mr. Damien E. Hughes of Challengers, St. Kitts. I also want to mention from my perspective here with the East Coast, I just want to reiterate as we go to the fair that the local contractors, in the contract, that local contractors and builders are the ones who will do the home. I want to reiterate that. I've been saying that for months now. That is in the contract, not by word of mouth. And you'll see some more development with the contractors and builders. They will be given the opportunity to learn the new technology as we introduce it on a larger scale here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So I wanted to put that forward. As I finally wrap up, I want to say that this government, this administration has been working extremely hard. As you can see, first we had to stop the bleed and stabilize the country. We are putting things in place that are sustainable policies that would effectively affect positively the lives of all of our people, whether it goes from energy to water to healthcare to education, tourism to creative arts to justice to good governance, social services. Touch whichever one you want. You can see each minister is working extremely hard to deliver to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I want to thank them and really say that they have been doing an excellent job. Encourage them to continue to work hard on behalf of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. We are here because the people have decided that they want us to serve. We will serve with distinction. We will serve with transparency, openness, and the principles of good governance. And to our sign language interpreter, I want to thank you very much. You have been there for a while with with those sign languages. And it was part of our thrust of inclusion so that persons in the community of the impaired, hearing impaired, that they too can participate in these critical government activities, such as press conferences, parliament. This is a new addition that our administration has brought to the fore, spirit of inclusion, good governance, transparency, and so forth. So thank you very much. You have done an excellent job. And I say to all of our people, thank you for sharing your time with us. God bless all of you. God continue to bless. Thank you.